It's going to be incredibly confusing, I think, to people. Just look at what's happened to the bond market this year. You know, against all expectations, yields have dropped from, I think it was 1.75 at the peak in March down to 1.3 as inflation expectations are exploding, right? We believe the reason for that is that we're probably, when all is said and done and the dust clears from the supply chain problems and everything, we're probably in a highly deflationary world. And we see three sources of deflation. One is very good. It's called technologically enabled innovation. Artificial intelligence training costs are dropping 68% per year.
Right.
When a cost drops that much, the demand for it picks up. And artificial intelligence is probably the biggest reason we're seeing the convergences between and among technologies. So we've got one S-curve feeding another, explosive energy, incredible deflation. That's the first deflation.
While the rest of the world thinks, I mean, if you were here for part of the day, everybody's talking about inflation.
Oh, and that's what I love. You know, if the whole world thinks that's going to happen, and a portfolio manager and analyst team thinks that's going to happen, well, if we're wrong, it's not going to matter that much, right? Because nobody's expecting it. It's not in the market. But if we're right, the returns are enormous. And I think that's what's going on with the technologically enabled innovation that we see, especially in healthcare, by the way. But there are two other sources of deflation. Disruptive innovation, there's another side to it. It's called creative destruction. And I think we're going to see more creative destruction than we have in all history during the next 5 to 10 years. Now, you can say, oh, you're just talking your book. We have rights law teaching us about learning curves and cost declines that suggest we are going to see incredible booms out there in parts of the world, but it's going to mean tremendous destruction in others. So when I say confusing, I mean that. And then the third source of deflation, I think, will be cyclical deflation. Most people are fighting us on this one. It's hard to fight us given our research on those other two. But this cyclical deflation, it started with lumber, $1,711 in May. Now we're at $500. Copper, $490. I think now we're at $425. Used car prices are surprisingly good. And I know we're getting pushback on this one too. They shot up 60% as everybody decided to avoid mass transit last year, right? And now we find ourselves supposedly in a chip shortage. I do believe in the chip shortage. Because
you believe there's a chip shortage?
I do believe there's a chip shortage because the world's going digital. But I believe.
But wouldn't that be inflationary?
Well, I believe chips are the new commodities. That's the point I'm making here. So chips are going to be what Dr. Copper has been in the industrial world. This is Dr. Digital, I don't know, in the form of chips. But you hear the auto industry screaming. You know, auto sales have dropped from 18.5 million units in April to 13 million. Now, these are annualized rates in August. That's more than a chips shortage. What happened last year is people bought the cars. They're in their driveways, garages, didn't want to take mass transit. And now there's a decision. What do I want to buy? A gas-powered car or an electric vehicle? Well, that's where the short supply is. And I think the excess supply is going to be in the gas-powered side. So this is a really important test case of why I formed the firm when we did. I think the disruption is happening to the auto industry now. You're looking at the traditional benchmarks. They may very well be right. All I know is when we are looking at the transformative growth that's going to take place in our space, and we're completely devoted to nothing else but disruptive innovation, we see explosive growth. I think one of the reasons they will look right in terms of GDP is if the other side of disruptive innovation is creative destruction, well, what's happening? It's the industrial world evolving into the digital world as more of the physical world goes digital, transportation importantly, right? And so the traditional benchmarks, GDP, the statistics that we look like are probably going to look pretty lousy at times, I would say. Certainly sector by sector as these transformations take place.